Well, hello everyone. Welcome to episode 3. We have my good friend Heesoo here. He is a sorority videographer, and I wanted him to come on because he has chosen a super niche, and I wanted him to kind of explain from his point of view how you can still make money even when you've really honed in on your niche. So, Hisu, I'm going to let you take over for a bit and just explain who you are.
Yeah.
And we're going to start with the first question as well, which is how did you get started in this? So, kind of a twofold who you are
Okay. So
and
like,
a little more what you do, and then also how you got started.
yeah. So like my Batman origin story, basically.
Yes.
Yes. Cool. Okay. So I'm Heesoo Yang. Um, it's actually pronounced Yang. So in Korean it's Yang, but like I just say Yang for just people spelling purposes. But yeah, I'm Heesoo Yang, and I would consider myself a sorority videographer. I also do photos. So on my Instagram, if you look me up, it says sorority Panhellenic multimedia specialist. So that's just kind of like the niche we were talking about. It's just so specific to just sororities. And that's all I do. Like I make a full-time living just working with sororities. And anything else kind of outside of that niche is just something extra for me to just make throughout the year. And let's see.
So, how did you kind of get started in the photo video world?
Yeah. So back in eighth grade, so this is like 2012, 2013, I just, I was a part of a speech class. And basically, we had like a student government situation going on. It was like a mock student government. And my title for that was historian, kind of getting coverage of what the whole journey was. So my project was to make a video, just a recap of everything that went on during that part of the curriculum. And it wasn't something I just like wanted to do. It was something that was assigned to me. And I didn't really know that I would be so passionate about it at the time. It was just something cool I did. And by the end of the whole process, I was like, wow, this is fun. Um, I
Did you have
remember,
to edit that as well? Like, put
yeah, I
it like
remember it was like on Windows Movie Media Maker or Windows.
I feel like everybody gets started on the Windows or like it was like
iMovie.
iMovie.
Yeah. I didn't have Apple products at the time. So it was just like, this was back in the day with like the Intel like i3 chips, i5, i7, i9. Like this was back in the day when we were struggle busting. So yeah, it was like an i3 processor. It was my mom's laptop, and I was just like, oh my god, this is so fun. And yeah, basically I just did that for that class. And I didn't really pick up a camera or anything like after that for a while. But in the back of my head, I was like, this is what I want to do. I'm like super interested in this. And then I think about a year or two later, my parents bought me my first camera. It was a Canon 70D. So I was a Canon fanboy for the longest time. Not anymore. I'm a Sony gang. Let's go. But yeah, I think everyone kind of starts out with like one of those like Canon DSLRs or whatever. So that was my entry into it. And just throughout that time, I was just taking photos, just doing videos, just for fun. Nothing serious. I wasn't really making money off of it. And then when it came down to like applying for colleges, there were some personal issues going on at the time. So I didn't really end up applying to typical film schools. And I ended up applying to TCU. Um, they gave me
My
the most
arch
money
rival.
too. I know. Sorry. Go Frogs. Maybe.
Pony up.
Pony up. So yeah, I got accepted into their film program. Not really much of a film program. But yeah, I got into there. They didn't really require portfolio. That was perfect at the time. Just like a lot of personal issues with my family was going on. They gave me the most money, so I was like, okay, why not? Went there, and I didn't really think about like what my direction would end up being. I think like most people, you don't know where you're gonna go. Some people they want to do directing, some people they want to do cinematography. I didn't know. So going in, I just knew I like to make videos, I like to shoot. Um, so then I stepped onto campus. I applied for an on-campus job. I worked with the TC Police Department as a safety escort. So yeah, I was one of those dudes just around at night, whipping around in my golf cart. If someone called feeling unsafe, I just show up to like their dorm and then take them to the library or something like that. And every Thursday night, I just picked up this one girl over and over and over again. And she just happened to be running the social media for the Delta Gamma chapter at TCU.
Okay.
So she was like, "You're a film major, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's fun, that's cool." And we became friends. And I picked her up. I'm not kidding. Like every Thursday on the dot, like around like 8:30, 9 o'clock. Like I always picked her up. So then she got comfortable with me. We became friends, and she was like, "Hey, I want to make a promo video for my chapter." I was like, "Oh, cool." I don't know what a sorority is. I like did not know what a sorority was. Especially like me coming from an immigrant background, my parents didn't know what it was. Like I didn't really know the typical American college lifestyle. So going into college, I went in blind. And if you don't know anything about sororities, like around when school starts up, they have bid day. That's where they end up like running home to the houses that like they got matched in during recruitment. So I'm just walking on campus, and there's just all these girls running in white shirts just everywhere. And I'm like, what is going on? This was me. Um, so that going into it, I was like, sure, like I'll make a video for your chapter. I don't really know what's the deal.
Yeah.
So I made a short little video for them. And they seemed to like it because they asked me to make it again for like the following year. And just throughout the whole time, I wasn't really focusing on this is what I'm gonna do. I still didn't know. And this wasn't like a viable career path up until that point. I was just still a student. I was just doing things like I was in the Student Filmmakers Association. I was working with like student government. So just doing little video projects here and there. That was like the extent of my overall videography career up until that point. But all of that came to a head whenever it became COVID. Like when COVID happened, that's when recruitment for sororities shifted. Like everything went online. And that is when I pivoted the most. Because
Okay.
up until that point on campus, I was the only one that had experience in anything to do with sorority videos. So all of them, like every single chapter at TC has inquired with me at some point.
Okay.
And they came to me and I was like, oh, okay, this is like cool. This is like something I could see myself doing. And it's like, I set my own hours and like I get to just hang out with like friends like up until that point. And one thing led to the other. I graduated, but I just kept getting these sorority gigs. And now like 3 years, yeah, graduated in 2021, 2025 right now. So like 3.5 like years ago, like I graduated and I was like, I guess this is what I'm doing. So yeah, I've just been doing that. And like this past year, I made my first 6-figure income year. So that was awesome.
Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
So when did they start paying you to do these kinds of things? Like,
So yeah, I mean I was getting paid from the very beginning, but that first video
oh,
I
okay.
charged them $350. At that time, that
Okay.
was like mind blowing. I'm like, wow, Like I got paid over $10 an hour, like just like going out and shooting. This is amazing. And I'm not working like a cash register or something like that. This is awesome. So that was just my mindset the whole time, like going into that.
Okay.
And then yeah, slowly like I started charging them more and more and more, and now I charge them like a typical day rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and like it started with that first one in you said what
Delta Gamma.
yeah, and that like the next year you did the same chapter. Did
Yeah.
other
So I only
chapters ask?
yeah, so no, I only worked with TCU Delta Gamma for the first 2 years of college.
Okay.
I was an unknown commodity for a bunch of those other chapters. And then whenever COVID happened, because I was like literally I was the only one on campus doing stuff like that.
Okay, so your work with Delta Gamma helped because then COVID happened and people saw that and were like, "Hey, we want that same thing."
Yeah. Like my
Okay.
second client ever, well technically I don't know. We're splitting hairs, but my second biggest client ever, they literally DM'd me and was like, "Hey, you make videos for Delta Gamma. We want you to." So
Okay.
yeah. And I work with that like that's my other main client. Like if you go on my Instagram, I did like grad photos with like
Yeah.
sorority schools. I don't know any other dude that could pull that off. Like I feel like I've earned that right.
Yeah. I was looking at the grad photos you've done and I was like, "Dang, these are
Yeah.
like really good and like creative in a way that like you
Yeah.
don't see."
Yeah.
So,
So yeah, well yeah, my personal grad photos, I had the Delta Gamma stole and then the Pi Phi stole, just because they were so impactful to me in my career and like where I'm at right now.
and so you said you graduated in
Yeah.
2021 and then you just kept doing this.
Yeah, I just kept doing it. The inquiries just kept coming in. I'm like, this is nice. I don't have to like I get to make my own schedule. I get to wake up when I want to wake up. If I want a day off, I can take a day off. And I don't have a boss above me. I get to just work with people. Like
Yeah.
this is fun. Like I'm not just sitting behind punching out like Excel spreadsheets or anything like that. Not that that's wrong. Like I love watching those Excel championship like tournament videos. Like those just go crazy. But
I
yeah,
just realized the power of Excel. I made some Excel documents and I was like, whoa, you could do this with Excel? I was like, oh,
dude, Excel's awesome.
yeah. So when you graduated, you didn't work other than those videos, right? Like you kind
Yeah,
of
I
started
didn't
your
do that.
business.
Yeah, I was the 3 steps back. Okay, yeah. So I was just doing sorority videos. Yes. So to answer your question, yeah, I was just doing sorority videos. I wasn't really doing anything else.
And did you have a company at that time or did you were just like doing it under your own name or like how did that?
Yeah, I'm still under my own name. Like I wouldn't say like I'm a production company.
Okay.
Um, like it's gotten to the point where like it's production company standards, but yeah, I wouldn't label myself as a company per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then how do you Okay. I don't know. Because like when I started my company, I started as like a sole proprietor
Yeah.
under my name, and that's how I did things. But over the past couple of years, I realized I want to make this an actual company, so I've like have an LLC and now
Hmm.
reclassified as an S corporation. So like technically, the way I'm classified is I'm an employee of my company. So
Yeah.
like I'm paid a W-2 wage and everything.
Yeah.
So you just kind of
Yeah, so far I'm just a sole proprietor. I've been talking to my CPA, so we're thinking of either like LLC, S corp, but that's
okay.
I didn't make enough money up until that point to be like, oh, this is like something I could take to being a company per se.
Yeah. There's like
Yeah.
a level of income threshold that you have to be at in order for it to make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. Okay. Uh, so you just found yourself doing sorority work, and like, other than the chapter videos, like what kind of videos do you create for the sororities?
Yeah. So sororities, like, they require like a lot of different things, which is kind of awesome. During the actual rounds of recruitment, so there's 4 rounds of recruitment. There is the open house round, there's a philanthropy round, there's a sisterhood round, and then there's a preference round. And some schools, they do videos like, yeah, but how do I explain this? Just depending on the school, there's videos in a combination of any of those rounds.
Okay.
Or it could be the chapter's preference to have a video during that round, and it's not required. So those are like
Okay.
the more typical like recruitment videos where you see like testimonials, people talking, like sitting down talking about their experience. But then there's also like the PR videos. So some chapters, they just invest money to do a production, I guess, and just create PR content. And then there's
Okay.
event recaps. They do a bunch of different events throughout the year. So I could show up for that. And then there's like actual like event PR opportunities. So during the week before, or like the couple weeks leading up to the actual rounds of recruitment, those girls come in for what we call work week, or some schools call it spirit week. And it's just basically training. So if you see a bunch of these corporate conferences or conventions where they all gather every year and then they just kind of rehash training, that's kind of what
Okay.
they do. So that's work week. But during that time, they just treat it as like PR. So they wear themed outfits and stuff like that. So we create like PR marketing videos just based on each of those thematic days. So yeah, just events, PR, or actual like talking head type of stuff, like cinematic kind of testimonials.
Okay, that's interesting. That's a lot more than like what I would have assumed
Yeah,
there are. Like when I first heard about you and saw your work, I was like, he does only sorority stuff. I was like confused because I was like, I didn't,
yeah,
being at SMU, sorority and fraternity life is like huge.
yeah,
But
for sure.
other than like Rush Week, or I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, just rush.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than like that, I didn't know that there was like much that goes, other than formals and all that stuff, like the
Mhm.
basic stuff. But I didn't realize there was that much stuff that sorority and fraternities did, because I was never a part of Greek life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like I did a video for SMU's fraternity and Greek life like office,
Yeah.
but it was just kind of like a promotional video of like, hey, this is why we love Greek life. This is,
Hmm.
all that stuff. But like, I didn't work with individual chapters, and I didn't know that that was a thing until I met
Yeah,
you.
like, well, for you, SMU, that was not that much of a thing.
Okay. So it's
So
just a
this is
TCU
like,
thing.
no, this, whenever you were a student, I'm just trying to look back because I've worked with them since like, I've worked in this field, in this area since like
Yeah.
2017. Yeah, as videos were never that big for sororities up until like the past like few years.
Okay.
So like that makes sense why you would be like, oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. Because like when I graduated in 2019.
Hmm.
Um, and I was technically a year, I had taken a gap year. So I was a year later than so I should have graduated in 18, but graduated in 19. And like, it was like sorority and fraternity life was huge at SMU, but it wasn't like something, you know, that you could theoretically make money off of. So it's interesting to see that in like the past 5 years since 2020, it's really
It's really
become a
taken off. Like I feel like I've helped kind of pioneer that because
yeah.
honestly, like I didn't really have competition per se until like the last couple years.
And do you work with other colleges, obviously, other than TCU?
Yeah, so TCU, as I just whoever inquires.
Okay.
So far I've worked with TCU, SMU, OU, A&M, Tennessee, Arizona State, Stephen F. Austin. Um, yeah, I think those might be there. There might be a couple more I'm like leaving out, but
So for Tennessee and Arizona State and OU, do they pay you then to travel there as
yeah,
well?
they cover all the costs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
no, it's awesome. I'm like, okay, it's cool because there's like in this field, there's not that many good quality videographers.
Yeah.
I mean, there are like talented individuals that end up working with sororities, but their videos just aren't very effective, in my opinion, because they don't really get it. Like, I get
Yeah.
these girls, I get what they want, I get what they need, and I know like the mindset of because because I've gone through so much post production with these girls, I kind of understand. Oh, like if I'm a PNM, so like a potential new member, like a freshman going through recruitment, I understand kind of what their mindset is, what they're looking for. So
Okay.
I can kind of incorporate that into my videos as a strategy. But
Okay.
I have the luxury of that because I've worked with sororities so much. But if you really haven't, or if it's just like a one off, then you really don't know. And because of that, and because I've been able to just niche down so much, I've been able to sell a product that's not only aesthetically good looking, but also actually statistically effective during the actual recruitment process.
And that calls to my mind the fact that like when you niche down like you have, you become the expert. You become the go-to person.
Yeah.
So like I haven't heard of anyone else who does specifically what you do. Like you're the
Yeah.
first person that I've heard of who does this. So it's kind of interesting like try to phrase a question, but I don't know how. Um, so you kind of hit on it, but like your expertise in this matter,
Yeah.
it go talk a bit more about the importance of that
Yeah.
when it
For
comes
sure.
to creating like specifically sorority content. And then I have another question for you after that. But so yeah, the importance of like the knowledge or the expertise.
Yeah. So I actually have like a whole spreadsheet of every single chapter in the country and their Instagram links.
Okay.
So I've personally gone through and seen every single sorority's Instagram at least once in my lifetime.
Okay.
So like first off, like I understand like the visual aesthetics of like because I've seen all of it.
Yeah.
So that kind of helps with just understanding what are good visuals.
Okay.
I understand because I worked with college students so much, I understand their schedule and how to communicate with them to be the most effective. Especially or yeah, like whenever they're scheduling girls for some of these scenes that we're shooting, something I advise them, for example, is hey, just text them individually directly rather than making a form of like an interest form of whoever's interested. Because
Okay.
mindset wise, it feels much more personal if you get a text from the recruitment chair being like, hey, I need you. You feel more indebted. versus like the opposite where, oh, it's something I can sign up for. Like there's plenty of other people that can show up if I flake or whatever. And that's like a really big issue that I run into constantly. But like just that simple advice has really helped kind of alleviate or circumvent a lot of those flakiness. It's just inevitable. These girls, they're very emotional. So sometimes like if there's like an exam coming up, they feel like, oh my God, like I just need to shut down. I just need to just focus on this. But then they're also paying me a lot of money to show up. And if there's no girls to shoot, it's just, there's
Yeah.
nothing to shoot. So yeah, just communicating, I think that's been helpful for me, for my clients, any prospective clients that come to me. That's so whenever they pay me, that's not that they're not just getting a videographer who can turn on a camera and light. They're also getting someone who can help give advice on communication. And then specifically during recruitment, I understand what goes into each round. So I try to cater to each chapter's needs for that round. So, for example, the first round of certain schools, like if you're in a certain tier of a chapter, if you're a certain reputation, it doesn't matter like if your video sucks in the first round. So with those kind of chapters, I'm just like, hey, let's just not focus as much onto this first video because you're gonna do great regardless. And like, let's focus all on this third round video where your retention rates fall off. And like vice versa, like if some schools, the open house round, the first round of recruitment is like end all be all. If you start out bad in the first round, you're just bad throughout the rest of recruitment. So then I'm like, okay, in my experience, if we do this type of intro, it helps keep people engaged or something like that.
Okay, so there's like a science behind
Yeah, there's like
each
an algorithmic.
chapter.
Yeah, there's like I try to make it cater towards each chapter. And on that
Okay.
spreadsheet, if we go 3 steps back, on that spreadsheet, I also have it separated by school.
Okay.
And there's great resources out there where people upload what they think the social hierarchy is.
Okay.
So I go through like 2.5 years worth of discussion posts of like people self-uploading these ranks. And then I do a tally mark. So each
Wow.
school has a social hierarchy of like these like chapter rankings.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So
That's
yeah, then that helps me kind of gauge like what their statistics are in recruitment.
okay.
And that helps me address like, hey, let's focus on this round of recruitment. That allows me to this knowledge allows me to directly address these chapters and be like, okay, so you're having troubles with retention in like the third round. So let's just try something new this round and see what happens. But
That's
because of that knowledge, like I can give them a sort of reference point or strategic guidelines on how to go about production, what kind of scenes to shoot, what kind of visuals we want to tell, like storytell.
that's just interesting that there's so much like I guess data information that is needed for your kind of work.
Well, it's not necessary, but I find it necessary.
But I feel like it helps you create the best
Yeah,
possible content for them. So it's kind
because
of
I
in a
know,
way
yeah, that's how
necessary.
I've been able to separate myself.
Yeah. Which like that it again goes to the whole thing of like you when you become an expert, you become the go-to person. Like
Yeah.
because you do this, you know how best to create the stuff for people, and then
Hmm.
that in turn leads to you creating the best content, so then other people see that and they're like, oh, this guy's the best at doing this. They don't know why. They just see the beautiful imagery and the beautiful story. But what they don't understand is that you've crafted that based on both data and knowledge of
Yeah.
just being in the space. That's just, to me, that's just kind of cool how you like, yeah.
Yeah, and also like I also have a sorority Bible per se.
Okay.
So there's 26 chapters that are typically within like the Panhellenic system. My next big thing, next big homework is to memorize all of it and just say it in order. I can't. I still need a list. But anyway, that sorority Bible, it has like when they were founded, how many chapters are
Okay.
active right now. I have a whole separate Excel or Google Sheet link within each of those that takes me to like all the current active chapters, and like what their philanthropy is, just all that mumbo jumbo. And that helps me understand the mindset of some of these advisors, because I'm not just working with these sorority girls. I'm also working with the advisors that oversee them. Just me knowing all the background information of each of those chapters helps me kind of gauge strategically what even the advisors want in their videos.
Okay.
So if you look at kind of, and also you see where they're mainly focused on. So for example, like Kappa Kappa Gamma, they're a chapter that's they've charted about 160, 170 total total Kappa 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 Gamma chapters in the country, and they've only had to close down about like 30 or so, less than 40. I know that for sure. That's very rare. Other chapters they've opened like 200-300 and they've closed down 100 plus.
Okay.
Or yeah, like upwards to 100. Like they've closed down a lot.
Is that just because they don't have the recruitment
So
or other
generally, yeah. So generally,
issues?
like chapters close down if you for a myriad of reasons. Like if the girls get in trouble too much.
SMU.
Like SMU Theta, they got kicked off campus
Yeah.
because
That was a big deal.
there was stuff going on within that chapter. Or like the really sad one is there's another on SMU's campus where they just didn't hit the amount of girls that they needed to each year.
Which one was that?
Gamma Phi.
G5. No, sorry, I
Yeah.
had like a couple of my
Yeah.
good friends were G5s.
Yeah,
From
it's really sad. So that's the sad reality of sororities. Like it's all fun, it's all sisters, you're making friends, but it's also like a social hierarchy,
yeah.
and it's just some just don't survive. But anyway, back to like my whole point about Kappa Kappa Gamma, and the advisors. Just me seeing the fact that they were very strategic about what chapters they want to open or
Yeah.
they want to charter, and which chapters end up not working out. That just gives me insight. Oh, this Kappa Kappa Gamma, they're all about tradition.
Okay.
They're very close knit family. Like they're very passionate. So like, whenever I do work with Kappa chapters, I need to make sure we kind of showcase that tradition per se.
Okay.
And based on all my interactions of like all the different Kappa chapters like I've worked with or like experienced or just like have seen, that's just been the case. Like they're very rooted in tradition. Some chapters like they're not so much like it's not about it's more about like their focus is more, it could be on different things like just how they go about the friendships within the chapter. But yeah, like whenever I worked with TCU Kappa, they were adamant. They were like, we got to show off the house, we got to show off the colors, we got to talk about the symbols, our mascot. Other chapters they just don't care. So within like their video Kappa was so adamant. They're like, we need to showcase this. But
Okay.
other chapters are like, yeah, we don't care. We just want to get those girls talking to each other. So let's spend that time in the video of them just like talking to each other and just not waste it on information dumps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's interesting. Again, this is kind of a new like world for me to hear about. So it's like, this is obviously our conversations, my first real
Yeah.
like look into this kind of videography and photography stuff. So,
And I think it's like any other niche. This is something like I obsess about. So when I tell people, or when people ask me about like, oh, like, how should I go about my career? I always tell them, is this something that you'll obsess about? And if not, then it's just not gonna show in the final product.
I agree.
This is something that keeps me up at night. I think about this as before I'm going to bed. I'm like, oh my god, like, what about this history of this chapter? Wow. Or how should I go about this round? Like those are my thoughts that happen before I go to bed. And if you're not willing to do all that, and if that doesn't bring you joy, then this maybe like that niche that you're possibly pursuing is not something that you should probably get involved in. Especially, you got to get into the mindset of like a potential client. They paid you for some, like they're placing a monetary value on something. They're willing to fork over money. So if you can't match that energy and that passion, I don't think you're doing right by them, and I don't think you're doing right by yourself.
No, I agree. I feel like there's a level of like, because otherwise, if you do, the only way I can really explain I started off doing weddings
Yeah.
and I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
would realize like,
I hate weddings too.
yeah,
I
there,
can't.
it
Yeah.
takes a level of like, to me, it takes a level of psychoticness to be able to love them and do them and consistently do them. Cause like,
Mhm.
number one, you're giving up your weekends. And like at the time, my wife was working a full-time job. So all she had were weekends to do things. So we could never really do anything. But then also you have to deal with brides and brides' mothers and people. And it's like, I finally got to the point where I was like, this is just not fun for me.
Mhm.
And I had to find where I was passionate about. And, thankfully I did, because otherwise it ends up either number one, you burn out and you hate what you do, or number two, you just end up doing something because there's profit in it. And it just becomes,
It's soul sucking.
yeah.
Yeah. Like for a while, even like as I'm like doing this, every now and then I kind of gaslight myself into taking some gigs that I'm like, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and like one example, like I booked a wedding for um this is my one and only wedding that I did, but like I booked a wedding for my worship pastor,
Okay.
like his daughter. Like the video turned out great, but the editing, I remember like I just sat in front of the computer and made no progress for like 3 days. I
I can't
loaded
tell
it up.
you.
It like I maybe got like 10 seconds in, like 10 seconds deeper into the edit. I added like 10 seconds the next day, 10 seconds the next. And it was just, I might as well have just not done it because I wasted 3 whole days just absolutely hating it.
I've edited so many videos and then deleted that edit because I was like, I don't like the way that this wedding is going. Like, I I will probably be taking on a wedding this year,
Yeah.
but the only reason is number one, it's a really good friend of mine, but number
Okay.
two, it's in Sedona, Arizona. And
Okay.
I have always wanted to travel to Sedona and do some kind of video, photo stuff. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to have this gorgeous backdrop. It's going to be this really cool wedding. Like they're doing like a pajama pizza party instead of a reception. And
Okay.
so it's like, I was like, okay, this seems like it'll be a really fun experience more than anything. And also our travel and lodging and stuff will be covered. So Miranda and I were going to just make it into a vacation.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, cool. This will be fun. But like, I'm already not dreading having to edit that because I'm like, okay, well, it's going to be an edit that I have to do. So anyway, I completely understand where you're coming from with like, oh yeah, you sit there for a while and you're like, I don't know how this is going to come together.
Yeah. Like, especially weddings, it's such an important day for these brides. I think they need to work with people that obsess over it at night. Like, I just imagine some of these wedding videographers, like, they're like me. I'm like worrying about sorority girls and like how the recruitment's gonna go. But like those wedding videographers, they're also just laying in bed. They're like, oh my God, how am I gonna make this day for the bride the best that it's gonna be?
I know some of those people and they're
Yeah.
some of the best. They are, I mean, they're they're priced accordingly, but
Yeah, they're passionate about what they do. And I think if you're looking for a videographer, you need to find someone that matches your energy.
yes,
Yes.
I agree.
And I think a lot of people reach out to videographers trying to force them into their box that they've set for themselves.
Yep.
And that leads to a lot of trouble down the end. Sometimes, like, maybe they can tell that you're not as passionate, like, it's reflected in the edit. Or they're just not getting as creative as shots. Like, I'm not gonna go out of my way to shot list for a wedding. I'm not. But
No.
for a sorority video project, I'm making shot lists. I have like a whole shot list, like shot deck set up. Like, I'm doing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think it's important that you don't force people to do something that they're not gonna match your energy in.
Yeah, a lot of people think that because you do photo or video that you can do any kind of photo or video, and that's not the case at all. Like you can, but it
You
may not
can,
be.
but like in a quick pinch, yes, they can. I think
Yeah.
everybody like they have the technical skills to do so, but in this space where it's so much emphasis right now on being authentic and storytelling, if you're not passionate about it, it will show in the final product.
Yes.
And you don't want that. No one wants that.
No.
No.
No, and that's I think that like I mean that yeah, that leads back to you have to be passionate about what you do in order to really be great at something.
Yeah.
You know, like there are videos that I'll do and I go to bed at maybe not every night, but I've gone to bed at night and I'm like, that was good, but how can I make it better?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah. Like after shoot, sometimes I'm in bed. I'm like, dang it, I should have filmed it this way.
exactly.
Why didn't I bring the gimbal? Like we could have done like so many shots in that one area, and then there's just so much of that.
But then you learn from that and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, next time I get this, I'm going to do this X, Y, and Z. And
Yeah.
yeah. So, question for you why, or maybe it's not as important to them, but is there a reason that you don't work with fraternities?
So it's all legal for me.
Okay.
I mean, I do work with like one fraternity at TCU. They're called PICAP,
Okay.
but they host a dance competition, like a lip sync kind of dance competition for like the community, but it's with the sororities.
Okay.
So that one, I'm like, okay, it's just like an event coverage, and like all the sororities that I do work with, like they're there anyways. So I work with them, but fraternities, I know people that were in fraternities like 30, 40 years ago, and they're still being litigated. Like lawsuits come, yeah. So I just rather would not have video content that could be potentially subpoenaed
Okay.
or called for testimony. I
Yeah,
just
that
I
makes
don't want to
sense.
be I don't want that's too much of a liability for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I didn't realize that that was okay. That answers the question.
Yeah, there's just so much that happens on that side of the Greek system.
Yep.
We don't need to go into it, but yeah,
Nope.
because of that, I would rather not.
That makes sense. I didn't I guess I didn't think of that when when
Hmm.
it asked you that question that like okay, yeah, that makes sense, especially with yes. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll
Let me
move.
change my iris real quick,
Come
cause
on,
like,
man. I thought it was Sony's. Perfect.
oh no, I did
Totally
manual,
kidding.
so
I'm just giving you a hard time, man. I have
okay, that
to.
looks a little. I was like, I'm like super, like I'm like turning into a ghost. Um,
Okay,
yeah.
let me ask you another question. What a like so one of the things that I know is as we continue to do work, we
Hmm.
continue to grow. So what is something that you wish you could have told yourself when you started out or your younger self, not even just
Hmm.
starting out, but like what's one thing you wish you could have told yourself when you were your younger self?
Um, One thing I've been realizing a lot this year, um, it's disappointment and fear is a choice,
Okay.
and so is optimism.
Okay.
So
Expand.
if you're too worried about like, oh my God, what if they don't reach out? Or like, oh no, like, did I not do good enough here? Or any of that doubt like that, you're allowing yourself to feel like that. So if you have the choice to be optimistic and you're not being optimistic, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
So for me, that's my mindset this year. I always get nervous after recruitment ends. So we'll see like where we are. But like if I just keep on with this mindset, I think I'll be fine. Just because when recruitment ends, it's just I'm super needed by all these girls. I get hundreds of texts, like thousands of texts just throughout the whole process. And emails and like you're at the focal point of a lot of these like really tough like big decisions. And then when all of that kind of stops, you're just like, "Oh my god." So, preface, yeah, my calendar, I go hard from like November to like first week of September. And then like there's just nothing. It's like silent. So for
I
like
can just
three
imagine
months,
you like when that ends, you just fall on your bed and you're like, I'm gonna sleep for like 4 years.
yeah. So like it's just so mentally taxing, like the whole process. And then once it ends, it's so jarring. It's always like, oh my god. Um, and every like every year this like I call it my off season. So every off season up until this point, I've had to deal with like mental issues of like the doubt starts creeping in. Um, so this year actually, I decided to just work on personal projects during that time.
Okay.
So this September 2025, you'll see me just doing a bunch of personal projects. So I could just not be so all up in my head about that. Um, yeah, I guess the grand finale or like the thesis of like of what to answer your question is if I could tell my younger self, I would just say choose to be optimistic and don't stay idle.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's, I guess like a lot of the times I will start using that to like get new clients or reach out to new people or talk to people or try to find new ways to make more money and do
Hmm.
more things. And like, because I do corporate videos, it's like I could kind of use that time to practice those kinds of things.
Yeah. And for videos too, because it's like a storytelling. If you're not fresh up here, that gets reflected.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that in like a lot of my work. So I've decided I'm gonna live life, and those experiences are going to be investments into my storytelling.
Yeah. You still have to have a life outside of business. I mean, like that's,
Yeah, I think I worried too much for the longest time. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have all this like off season idle time. Like, what am I gonna do? I'm not making as much money. Like my bank account's not growing. It's just shrinking. It's going the other way. And you're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen to my life? But
yeah, it's,
yeah, I think if you're just overly optimistic, that I'd rather spend my time during that like idle season being optimistic than being sorry for myself.
it's hard though. Cause like you do see your bank account dropping and you're like, oh no. But
Hmm.
like you also have to understand that like something that you're building this up. So at
Yeah.
some point it's going to get to the point where like yes, you have these slow seasons, that's inevitable, but you have enough money to help ideally if you've done your due diligence and you've saved enough and you've been cautious, you have enough money to cover you for
Hmm.
those times of drought. Like I know my June to August are kind of dead.
Yeah.
You know, you have SMU has graduation in May, and like
And
halfway
then
through
it's
May,
summer is just
yeah.
over.
And so like I work up until about halfway through May, and then I start back again halfway through August. And like I still do projects throughout the months, like those
Hmm.
months, and I make some money, but they are so slow.
It's not the same. And
No,
that's when you have to really just invest into yourself and not go off the deep end.
yeah. That's why personal projects and passion projects are so important because it's
Yeah.
like not only are you honing your skills, you are, learning new things, hopefully,
Hmm.
but you're also keeping yourself busy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm one of those people that I can't sit down. If I'm sitting down, I'm like, what can I be doing? Like, I have to. I think
Yeah.
some people call it high functioning anxiety. I don't know if there's an actual term for it, but I basically like if I'm sitting down, it's like I can't sit down, I can't sit still, and it's like something I've really been working on over the past year is just like being able to be okay with like sitting down and playing some video games
Yeah.
or like chilling while also taking into account the fact that like yeah, I still need to be doing projects as well, just don't need to be doing them 24/7. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
So, um potentially last question. What is your favorite project that you've worked on?
Okay. So I explained DG, TCU DG, That they opened the doors for me.
Yeah.
But I had two separate stalls. So
Yes.
Pi-Fi, Pi-Fi at TCU, they reached out. They were like, "Hey," so this was when COVID happened,
Yeah.
like right when COVID happened, and they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, like, what's good? You make videos for our competition, so you should make videos for us." And like they are like direct competition to each other, which is kind
Yeah.
of interesting. That I work with the two competition chapters, but yeah, they reached out, and then I made a video that year for them, for the open house round of recruitment. So this is when it went virtual, like everything went virtual, and they needed to make a video for the open house round. And that video was just so life changing for me. And there was a lot going on for me, like personally. I had 4 surgeries that year.
4
So
surgeries?
I had 4 surgeries.
Wow.
During that whole time, I was drugged up. Um, I was editing for 30 minutes, going to bed for 30 minutes, waking up editing for 30 minutes, going to bed for 30 minutes because I couldn't sleep. So that was like the only thing keeping me sane.
Okay.
But that project really showcased for me that, oh, I can be a storyteller. Like I can make an impact in this space. So that chapter, they were like not as notable as they are right now. But that video significantly changed like their whole reputation on that like on TCU's campus.
Okay.
And it was because everyone else, they made videos on iMovie, and like we were the only ones that were taking it seriously. So I received about, we had those girls get iPhone testimonials. So like girls would set up like their iPhones at home and then just record themselves answering like a bunch of questions. I think there were like 8 to 9 hours worth of testimonials that I went through.
Wow.
And I just took that. I didn't get paid enough for this, by the way,
When do we ever?
but I just took that time of just me being super sick, and I just poured all my energy into it. And the approach honestly was like a documentary, because it was just a bunch of girls. They were being honest about how they felt about COVID, how they were scared. But throughout the friendships that they found, they really found their peace and their home just throughout this whole process. That was a story that I was able to tell, just slicing and dicing up those like 8 to 9 hours of testimonials. But just seeing a tangible impact during recruitment where I can say confidently, like, I had an impact on them having such high retention rates throughout each round. So to go back one step, retention rates, I've brought that up a couple of times.
Yeah.
This is like the end all be all statistic that if you're a recruitment chart, you should care about. So let's say there's 13 sororities. So we'll go to TCU as a reference. So there's 13 sororities. By the end of that process, at the end of the first round, you need to whittle that list down to like 8 to 10. And then you go into the second round, and then you whittle that down to like a top 5, top 6. It's just depending on like how they decide to whittle it down. Then it becomes like a 3, then it becomes a 2. Like the really good houses, they'll have 100% retention rate. So that means every single girl that's going through recruitment, put them somewhere in the top 8 to 10.
Okay.
And then second round, like if they have 100% retention, that means like they were still in everyone's like top 5 to 6. same thing, same thing. So like top 3, top 2. Um, I was able to just give them like a retention rate that they've never seen before, just throughout that process. And just like seeing that I can make an actual effective video that's not just like cool, and where we could tell actual stories, and something that really was near and dear to my heart, as like it really was like the saving grace. I don't know how I would have gone through. Like I lost 50 pounds throughout that whole like process of like the surgeries. There was COVID, and then I got braces that year too. So it was just, I was
Dang.
just running a fever about half the year, basically.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, when I say like that's my favorite project, that project gave me the confidence to be like, hey, this is something I feel like I can make an impact, like a actual impact on the world, where I feel like I have a purpose. This is something I'm very passionate about. This is something where I could serve an actual measurable statistical role in achieving something. Um, yeah, it was just awesome. So I'd say that video project, I didn't shoot a single thing. Like there was no like footage that I shot. It was all self-gathered footage. So it was just all editing. But just that whole thing was just so awesome to go through.
It's interesting that like I so I promise this will relate to this, but I love documentary work.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that you don't not every single shot in documentaries is always the most beautiful. Sometimes it just gets it just gets the point across. And it's interesting that like in our industry, we're so wrapped up in what camera does everybody have, like what camera are you
Hmm.
using? Are you using like, whatever? But yet you were able to create something that was able to sell this chapter perfectly
Hmm.
without an expensive camera.
No.
And it's cool to like that sometimes more important than anything is the story that
Hmm.
you're trying to tell. And when you tell the story well, it has a bigger impact on people than the quality of the camera.
Yeah.
And so that's what's cool is that like from that project that you can tell a story no
Hmm.
matter what. And that's I think that's one of the most important things in our industry and to get good video work is, can you tell a story?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. That's like a huge emphasis I tell to my clients, and that's even reflected in how I go about the editing process. So with the editing process, I don't know any other videographers that do what I do, but or at least who work with sororities. But
Yeah.
I make them sit down with me for a minimum of like a 4-hour meeting, and we go through all the testimonials we shot together, and
Okay.
I make them choose what goes into the final cut versus like me just showing up, asking them a bunch of questions, and then that's it. And then in the edit, like I put together something that I think makes sense.
Is there a reason that you do that? Like make that like have them do that versus
I just think this is such a personal journey for a bunch of these girls. And I shouldn't be the bottleneck. I shouldn't be the one that's gatekeeping them from being able to tell a more personal story. Because
okay.
I only see like through my lens.
Yeah.
Because sometimes like, or like this happens all the time actually. I'm going through the edit with them and they want a certain thing, like a certain thing that girls say like in the video.
Yeah.
And I would have never thought to leave that in there. I would have just been like, why?
Okay.
But there's like so many times stuff like that happens. Or sometimes I think, oh, this girl, like this take, she's like super like emotional, so cute. Um, but then like the girls are like, yeah, she's faking the emotions right now. I wouldn't be able to tell. Like I'm a guy, so like I can't tell. So from like I do my best now. I can get about 90% there by myself now. But just little nuanced stuff like that, because I've experienced that so many times, I'm like, okay, I need them to be the final check through before we go into making the final edits.
Okay.
And also like during the production process, for like bigger sets, this is like a no-brainer. But for smaller productions, like this is like the most mind-blowing thing. I bring an iPad and it has a live feed. So I use that as a director's monitor. So that's common on like any set you go on. But for like smaller productions, especially like these sorority girls, that's crazy to them. Because most of the time they just think like you'll just show up with a camera and then like, hey, just do this, do that, and then every now and then like you see on the back like in the inky dinky little screen, they're like, oh, that's cute, blah blah blah. But I make sure that they have a director's monitor so that they can actually give input into, hey, maybe let's not shoot it that way, or like, hey, like I think we're emphasizing this too much, like can we refocus? Just having that real on like on the clock or on time, or just having the real time feedback is just awesome. And it all adds to the whole storytelling element.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely noticed that like when you're able, like there are some times where I'll bring like a director's type monitor
Mm-hmm.
on, or I have a monitor on camera and I turn it so that the person that is hiring me, if they're there with me, that they can see it as well, so that they can
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, and I ask them like, hey, does this look okay to you? Like I want it to be a like a collaborative process. Like, yes, I know what looks best. I know what is, technically from a technical point, I know what's best, but that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't always what the client wants. And you have to also understand that like you are getting paid to bring the client's vision to life. You do that with your knowledge and expertise of things, but sometimes it's good to bring in them so that they feel like they had
Input.
kind of a yeah, and that's important to them.
Yeah, and then like on a more devious level, if they're more a part of it, they feel like they were part of making some of these decisions. So in the editing, they're not as picky, I've noticed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's I've never really had I've never really like had input from clients. I usually put the story together
Yeah.
myself. The last project I did, I took the story, I put together a story what I thought they wanted,
Mm-hmm.
and then I sent it to them and I said, "Hey, let me know." And they were like, "Hey, this is kind of what we were wanting, but we were wanting more of this." So I said, "Okay." So that I went back to the drawing board and kind of put in a couple different sections into a video and then took out a couple of the sections, and they were like, "Okay, this is perfect." And so it
Mm-hmm.
was like I tried to be as collaborative as possible, so like that they felt like they got what they wanted, and
Mm-hmm.
they felt like I was, available to hear what they want rather than just saying, "Hey, here's the video."
Yeah.
And I find that that worked better. Like it may have taken a little bit more time, but overall it
Mm-hmm.
was a better video and it told a story better.
Yeah. I'm like a big collaborative guy. So I do minimum 3 pre-production meetings. And they're all like pretty lengthy. They're all like 3 to 4 hours long.
Do you charge for that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
So, oh yeah, good.
Some people don't.
Yeah. If anything, like in the negotiation process, if they're lacking budget, that's the thing I like. wave.
Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, from the very get-go, I just make it very clear to my clients. I'm like, hey, this is a collaborative process. I want you to be a part of every step of the journey. And yeah, they feel like they were a part of something. And at the end, like, they're very proud of the video versus like, oh, you just hire somebody and then they make a cool video. Like, I'd much rather have the first option than the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I
Happy
agree.
clients, happy me.
Yes, because
Yes.
happy clients make your life easier.
Yes.
Unhappy clients make your life a living nightmare.
Disaster. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have one last question for you,
Cool, cool, cool.
and that is what a two-parter, sort of two-parter question. What's
Okay.
next for you in your business, and
Okay.
are there any upcoming projects or goals that you're excited about?
Okay. So I think I've made a commitment to myself that I will be in this niche for the next 10 years.
Okay.
So for the next 10 years, I will just be hanging with the gals, I guess. No, but like, I really enjoy it. And right now, I feel like I'm so good at what I'm doing. It'd be a waste to this space of like, or this niche, or just the sorority world if I'm not a part of it.
Yeah.
So I know like I can make a great impact, and I've just committed myself at least for the next 10 years. I want to see how far I can take it in the next 10 years.
Okay.
But I do try to do some side projects every now and then. So like I mentioned to you before, I'm gonna do a bunch of personal projects in my next off season.
Yeah.
So I do yeah, I take grad photos as well. And that's something I think could be a more sustainable run for me after I kind of like slowly weed myself out of this niche over the next 10 years. I do think there will come a day where I'm like too old for these girls. Not like in a superficial sense, just I don't think I'll be able to continue being relatable or like just understand their headspace at a certain point. So
Yeah.
I just want to prepare for that. And I think grad photos, like that's something that's like consistently getting bigger. And everywhere around me, like the rates are just consistently getting higher.
Yep.
So my big project I want to do in this off season in September. So I won't be able to focus on it until this next recruitment cycle is over. But I visited Princeton recently and Yale, Harvard, a bunch of those Ivy Leagues.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh my God, this is, I shoot this way. There's a shot. I shoot that way. There's a shot. I like go up the stairs. There's a shot right there. Just every angle you can imagine on those campuses is just beautiful.
Yes.
So I'm like, what if I try to do some research and like try to find interesting people or interesting girls at each of those schools and do a grad photo session, but like in an editorial sense, and then I can make like a YouTube series or something like that, or something fun where I could even interview them for a little bit, just kind of get their story, especially like those schools, like those anybody going to an Ivy League, they have an interesting life. So I think that might be cool content, something that I could do on the side. I've been racking up miles, so I'm like, I could just go out there, fly out there using my miles for a couple weeks or something like that.
That sounds like a really fun thing to do.
Yeah, so that's like something in the near distant future that I'm like looking forward to. Like even closer, I So my first shoot is gonna be in 2 weeks
Okay.
with this recruitment cycle. So we're doing our testimonials for TCU Delta Gamma.
Okay.
So it's like talking head. I have over $200,000 worth of camera equipment at this point, which is a blessing to say the least.
Yep.
And yeah, I just love that whole process of just setting everything up, just making these cool different sets. So yeah, I'm like really looking forward to that. I'm still getting inquiries. I've been expanding. I've the first guest on this podcast, Mitch.
Yeah.
Like I've been hiring guys like Mitch, and then I've hired you for like other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, since I'm expanding, it's been cool. So I've been taking in a lot more inquiries than I normally do at this point.
That's good. I mean, that's
So yeah, there's just a lot to look forward to this recruitment cycle. Every year I just run into like really cool people, so I'm really blessed to be able to do what I do and to work with the types of people that I work with. They're very well connected. They're very encouraging. They're very positive and optimistic. So it's been awesome.
that's good. It's always important. You know, we obviously work a lot with other people, and people I feel like can make or break how we feel about a project.
Yeah.
It's like if we work with someone who's not great, you're like, oh, okay, well, this project wasn't fun. But if you work with someone who is really great, then it can make the project almost more fun. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's awesome.
sweet. Well, appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you.
I really wanted you to bring your expertise and knowledge because, like, again, the whole idea is that you niche down in our field, or that's what everyone says, is find a niche. And it's like, well, how far can you go with that? And I feel like you've gone pretty far into like really honing down what you do. And it's so I wanted to have that conversation with you because like I feel like this is such it's like it could be scary to be like, oh, I'm going to only do this. But yet you also become the expert. And as you've said, basically like you've gone to like, you know, Arizona and Oklahoma and Tennessee and other places to kind of like work with other chapters at other schools that not just TCU or SMU. It's kind of cool that you like now it's like a
little network of sorts.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that like you can really make a living and grow. Like you are growing. As you said, like you're hiring on other people to continue to take on other stuff that you can't take on because you're getting so many requests. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool to see that like you're not only successful, but you're also growing. So that's just, to me, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think people I understand the fear, but like I said, like fear is a choice.
Yeah.
And honestly, like you really don't have control over anything.
Yeah.
Like I've had someone say this to me before, like maybe like all of my Panhellenic, like so Panhellenic is like the governing body of any given sorority of any given school.
Yeah.
Maybe like all these Panhellenic groups or like Panhellenic councils just randomly were like, hey, we're just not gonna do videos this year. So then I'm like out. Like I don't know, like that's not gonna happen, obviously, but hypothetically that could, like, you just have no control over anything, so why just spend the time being so all up in here about, oh my gosh, like what if I do this, like what if I like stop getting client, like you can't have that. You're not gonna be able to be successful if you have the mindset like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's always going to be something that could potentially lead to a drop in business, but not as far as I've seen. I haven't seen a ton of people in our industry lose all their business. Like even
Yeah.
COVID, like I knew people who lost a lot of business and had to take on different types of work and a bunch more work, but they still had business.
Yeah. And then like I know like I'm very blessed. I didn't pursue this niche. It just kind of fell in my lap. And
Mm,
that's not the same story for like a lot of people. Like I just know there's a lot of people that try out videography and just try to pursue that as a career, but they can't find a niche, and then like they just move on to a totally different like career field, like just industry.
yeah.
Um, so there is like an element of that, like I do have to like respect. Um, but like to those people, I just think that as long as you're willing to be overly optimistic, and as long as you're willing to just be able to work hard and just be passionate, I think eventually like you will find a groove that you enjoy and work with. And you
Yeah,
just have to trust the process.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, like for me niching down wasn't something I pursued. It just kind of happened. But I think if you just kind of treat life that way, if you just kind of treat it as like it's a very organic process, I think you will eventually be able to find what your calling is.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was really fun. And I know that we've worked once together, and know we'll work more together in the future. Uh, I
Yeah.
will leave your social media links and your website in the description so people can get a hold of you.
Okay.
Um,
Cool, cool, cool.
um, yeah, so thank you for coming on, and thank you all for listening to the podcast. I hope you learned something. I hope that this was a fun one, and any comments or questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if any are directed to Heesoo, I will make sure that he sees them and can respond. So,
Sounds
yeah,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right.